Well, this is the next engine up for restoration and work. This is a Swan M1, British UK made steam engine. Not a lot is known about these. What we do know is that they were made by a company called the Hobran Engineering Company Limited, and they were based in Wolverhampton. And they were called Swan Steam Toys because they were made for a company which was called Swan. And that's about all we know. And I say they, there were two models. This is the M1. There was an M2, which is even rarer than the M1. And basically that had the same firebox, chimney and boiler, but it just had a larger engine from what I can gather from the pictures I've seen. This one is in very good condition. Obviously the firebox, chimney and base are quite rusty, but it's complete. It's all there. Everything moves. And it's even got its burner, which is an amazing thing to say these days. 9 times out of 10 when you get any engine off of eBay, it doesn't come with its burner. But this one's got its burner, and again, from the pictures I've seen, that is, in fact, the genuine article. So let's close in and have a look at that. I think it could do with some new wicks. Well, certainly the centre wick's almost missing. And I think originally they were painted black, so that's going to need a bit of attention. But it's there, which is brilliant. There you can see the engine. Very simple oscillating cylinder, single oscillating cylinder, but it's all free. It all moves. I believe the body. I mean, this looks like it's cast brass, and I believe it was originally painted green, like the flywheel. I also think the crank was originally painted too, but as I said, this all needs to be stripped down and taken apart and cleaned up. So that's what we'll be doing next. It looks like it comes apart fairly easy, all apart from the firebox, which I believe looks like it's riveted onto the base. So I'm going to have to drill those rivets out, but I think the rest of it will come apart quite nicely. So let's get on with it. Well, that didn't take too long. The engine itself was actually, there were a couple of screws holding that in place, so that was quite easy. There were 4 rivets holding the base, but only 3 of them were actually holding, and that was a simple matter of just grinding the heads flat and tapping them through with a drift. It's got a very interesting piston. It's as you can see from that, I'm assuming you can see from that, it's actually hollow. So it's not solid, it's just it's a piece of tube, which is interesting. You do get that occasionally, but it's unusual. Normally pistons are solid. It's also quite large diameter on that piston. So yeah, so it all came apart very easily. All the threads in the boiler are in good shape, so that's always helpful. As I said, the major work here is going to be de-rusting. This all needs to be de-rusted. So we'll get a vinegar bath going and get that started. Well, we're at that first messy, mucky stage of the restoration process. The base and the chimney are in here, vinegar bath. The firebox is in there, vinegar bath. And I decided that we would have a go with the Ovenmate, my favourite paint stripper, on the engine frame and the flywheel. And interestingly enough, as soon as I put it on, the paint went from green, you can see that, to a sort of yellow colour, which is kind of strange, but it's obviously having an effect on the paint. There was very little paint left on the engine frame itself, so close in on that. So this should be fairly easy. I expect the paint stripper will take all of that off quite nicely, and then going over it with the wire wheel will finish that up. Then I've got to find some green paint that's suitable. That's the next stage. Yeah, so this has been in overnight. I haven't brushed it, but we will give it a quick brush now with a brass wire brush. The rust was quite deep on here, so I'll dip that back in again. So, but I can already see some of the metal coming through, particularly down here and here. where the rust has come off already, which is just great. That's the base plate. The base plate's looking actually a lot better. I think you can already see the metal coming through there, so that's going to need a little bit longer, but we're getting there. Oh, I know what it's stuck on. It's stuck on the crank, because I also put the crankshaft in there, the crank, and then there is the oh yes, that's looking nice. I'm assuming really from this, it seems like that the rust on the firebox wasn't it was more surface rust, I think, on the firebox, as that's coming off nicely. So we'll put that back in. Ooh. Yeah, so it's all coming along well. As I say, this is the filthy part of the restoration process. It's got to be done though, and it works really well. So I'll probably leave those two in over the rest of today and overnight, and then they'll come out finally tomorrow, I expect. Well, the first few bits cleaned up very well. That is the flywheel, and literally that's just the paint stripper that's got that into that situation. No, I polished the outer edge of the flywheel on the wire brush, but so that's ready, pretty much ready now for repainting. This is the engine frame, and obviously that's cleaned up really nicely. Let's turn the lights away. It's too bright, I think, at the moment. Yeah, so that's cleaned up really nicely. A couple of things I noticed on the engine frame when I cleaned it. Let me get my pointy stick so you can see more clearly. Let's come up a little bit. The only machine surfaced is the faceplate here, where the cylinder meshes up against it. Or none of the other surfaces appear to be machined. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick it in the mill and just square off these surfaces here. That's the one where the bolt goes through with the spring on it to hold the cylinder against the engine plate, and that obviously is where the crankshaft goes through, but these are not machined anyway, so I'm just going to square those up on the lathe, and I will probably do the same on this side to this face as well. And the other thing I noticed, which if you can look at that nice and carefully, this hole in the end of the crankshaft, effectively the big end, it was on a car, that is oval, and it's quite sloppy. If we put the crank pin into it, this whole thing is really sloppy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attempt to drill this out so it's actually round, because at the moment obviously it's oval. Put some brass rod in there, either solder or Loctite it, and then re-drill the crank pin hole. But we do actually have a little bit of progress. So there you go, that's where we are so far. Well, the parts have been in the vinegar bath now for two and a half days, and I have pulled them out and given them a damn good scrub with brass wire brush on a couple of occasions. Now it's time to pull them out and see what we've got. Well, that's the firebox. I think you can see that's come up pretty good. I think it was mainly surface rust on the firebox, so I don't actually think the firebox was that bad. But it's also helped to take all the soot and crap off the inside, so that's pretty good. Let's have a look at the chimney, the smokestack. Again, it's still got a little bit of rust left on it, but you know, pretty damn good really. And finally, now that's come up really well. I'm well pleased with that. That was really crusted with rust, and that's pretty much taken all of it off. So that's pretty damn good. I'll close in on that for you. Yeah, there you go. This is nice now. This has come up really well. So I'm well pleased with that. And that's a damn good start. They need washing off in fresh water now, and then they'll be taken over to the wire wheel and cleaned up for ready for painting. Well, been all over the de-rusted parts with the wire wheel, and they've come up quite nicely. So all ready for the next stage, which obviously is paint. I've got to do some masking off on the little burner here, but other than that, we'll be ready to go on the paint. Well, we're at the intermediate part of the paint stage. Several days ago now, I etch primed the base, the chimney, the flywheel, the burner and the engine frame, and I used XHT high temperature engine paint on the firebox. So hopefully, if the weather gets nice and warm out today, I will be able to put the final coat on all the grey stuff, and then it's only a matter of cleaning up a few of the remaining pipes and brass parts, and we can get this thing reassembled. Well, the Swan M1 is just about ready to go back together. Paint's been given quite a few days now to harden off, so I think it's about ready. I did do one thing slightly different. If we'll swivel the camera around and have a look at the cylinder and the crank. Now, originally, if you remember, the crank, the hole in the end of the conrod was oval, and I was going to plug that and re-drill it. But what I ended up doing, purely because I think it was easier, I drilled it out until it was back to being round again, and then I simply made a new crank pin to fit the new diameter hole. It was just the crank pin is just a press fit into the crank, so, and it was only brass, so very easy to make a new one. And now I've got a really nice fit on the crank pin and the end of the conrod. So yeah, that worked out all right. So hopefully, once we get it back together, we'll actually have a working Swan M1. Well, the Swan M1 is finally done. I think it turned out alright actually. It cleaned up really nicely. The boiler was in very good condition on this, so that was a bonus. It really just needed cleaning up. So the worst parts were the firebox, the chimney and the base, very badly rusted. But we got there in the end, got it all cleaned off, and it's looking good. Really, all we've got to do now is get it steamed. Pull that out a minute. That's the little burner. So yeah, I think it's come out okay. So right, let's get it steamed up. Well, here we go. I'm using the little Bix gas burner again. I much prefer to use that than a meth burner where it's appropriate, because the gas burner is much cleaner, and it leaves the boiler nice and clean, whereas the mess burners you generally tend to leave a deposit. That may not be, of course, powerful enough. We'll have to wait and see. But let's leave it a little bit, let it build up some pressure. Well, it turned out the little gas burner wasn't enough, so I've gone with the original mess burner, and we are off. And it does produce a lot of steam, as you can see. But it is running. Yay! The steam certainly pours out of the chimney, which is great. Yeah, there we go, the Swan M1 running under power for the first time. Very quiet running an engine as well. See if we can get the whistle to work. Yeah, whistle works. Yay, always good. Yeah, I'm well pleased with that. We've got a bit of a steam leak around the feed pipe here, which I'm going to have to attend to. But it runs, that's the important thing. So there you go. Swan M1 running under its own steam. First time after restoration. And I have to admit, I think it's a very nice looking engine. They certainly got the design right on that. Looks really, really good. Quite a large boiler, good capacity in there, good 400 millilitres up to the level plug. Although it did prime quite badly when it first started up, so I've actually emptied a little bit out. So you really probably only want the boiler about half full. Anyway, there you go. The Swan M1 under steam for the first time since its restoration and running very nicely indeed. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching. Cheers.